Hey there, and welcome to part 1 of this tutorial series on the FlightFactor 757 and 767 add-on aircraft for X-Plane 11. This tutorial is for those who are new to higher level payware aircraft for flight sim, at least X-Plane anyway, or an advanced user just looking for a quick start guide to their recently purchased add-on aircraft. The first 3 parts of this series will focus on the very basic operations of every phase of flight, and so if you think there's something that I may have missed, go ahead and leave a comment. It may end up in a future episode down the road. Just keep in mind that this is not going to, or supposed to be, a super in-depth look at the systems or how to fly itself. It's more of a general guide to getting set up quickly and efficiently for your first flight in this type of aircraft in the simulator. Let's get started. Okay, we're loaded in at Reno Tahoe International Airport here in northern Nevada, and we're going to be doing this flight today from Reno to San Francisco. As you can see, we have a 757-300 with the Pratt & Whitney PW2000 engine sitting in front of us in the Delta Airlines livery. We're going to go ahead and jump in the cockpit and get started here. So we're going to want to connect some power. We'll come down to our tablet here, open that up, and we'll go right to our ground operations tab. Go ahead and turn our our GPU, and you know what, since I mentioned it, we'll go ahead, set our fuel truck, our gate config, and our chocks. We want to make sure that we have our avionics settings correct. Here is our avionics settings. Most of this is just how you would like the displays to look for you. Some things that I find are, the big one's going to be PIP FMC right here. This is going to give us our performance page in the FMC. It's the newer FMC type. We'll have that selected. We're going to have GPS equipped, EGPWS, and our 8.3 kilohertz radios. So at a bare minimum, if you're going to copy my settings, it needs to be these 4. And we'll go ahead and hit Save Config. Next, let's just go to our sim settings here. Again, some of this stuff is going to be personal preference, how you want the sim to be. Metric weights is right here. An interesting one is interflight data. Basically, when you fly the plane, if you have this on, you're going to want to perform maintenance from flight to flight, and there's a button in our ground tab that I'll show you as well, but it saves wear and tear on the plane basically from flight to flight, so that's kind of an interesting setting. Realistic sound changes the soundscape a bit if you're using headphones, which is nice. Rear weather radar and advanced wind shear, again, just kind of personal preference stuff. All the other stuff in here, here's some VR interaction options. Sounds, you see I've messed with just the master and the air con, but that's because the air con is super loud. And then effects, again, just stuff that I've kind of messed around with. You can mess around with these if you'd like. It's all just personal preference stuff, guys. If you change anything, just hit Save Config so you don't have to mess with it again. So once we've done that, we've got our essentials connected here. We can close this. Let's go to our overhead panel. Now the first thing I like to do is get our electrical system fired up. So we will go and start our battery. Why is it so hard to do? There we go. We'll close that flap and we'll set our standby power to auto. We'll connect our ground power, which is this right here. We'll click in our bus ties and our util buses and our engine generators. Next, let's get the IRS aligning. This is our IRS module in the overhead, and all we need to do to get the IRS, our inertial reference system, aligning is to set these 3 knobs to the nav position. Then we can track the progress by turning this knob all the way over to the right, and you see the process takes about 7 minutes. Once we're done with that, let's go back to our iPad. As you can see, we've got some displays illuminated now. We'll go to our operations. We need to open our door. So to load the plane, we're going to need this left forward door open. We'll just click that. Here are some other settings you might want if the livery or the airline you're flying doesn't have winglets or they use the Rolls-Royce engines. Here are those options. Auto gear lever is a nice one just because when you bring the gear up, when it's no longer needed in that on position or up position, it'll just switch it to that middle off position for us. So I've messed with the wing flex as well. It's kind of just nice to see a little extra wing flex. We can go back to our ground tab here though, and let's get some of our weights filled out. So we're going to be looking at an operational flight plan I generated on SimBrief. As you can see here, we'll go and skip past page 1 and 2. There is some relevant information there, but we'll come back to it. We'll come right here to our weights. Now here's where we just kind of fill in our values. So we're going to have 179 passengers. We're going to have 12,500 pounds of cargo. And it says we only need 7.9 as our block fuel, but let's go ahead and put 9,000 pounds in, an extra 1,100 pounds. Then, to optimize your CG, we just hit Optimize. And I don't think we would normally load the plane like that, so we'll go ahead and hit it again. Yeah, that looks a little better. Sometimes the Optimize CG button's a little goofy. We can move some passengers forward here, though, I think. We could fill first class, couldn't we? Yeah, just about. That looks good. You know, let's see here. That looks a little better. A little bit more evenly distributed. We want around 20 to 24 for our CG value. 22 is pretty good. We've got our door open. We've got our essentials connected. Let's go ahead and load the plane then. We hear people getting on. We can get rid of our flight plan for the moment. And, oh, you know, let's make sure we hit our maintenance button. I do have inter-flight data on, so we'll go ahead and do that. We're done with the iPad again. Let's go ahead and work on our overhead panel. So we've connected our electricals, we have the IRS aligning. You'll see we have 5 minutes left here. Let's just start working our way down each column of the overhead panel here. So we'll switch our yaw dampers on, push in our hydraulic pump buttons. Let's get the APU fired up. So to do this, we'll turn it to the on position, and then we'll move the selector to start once this fault light goes out. There it goes. We'll turn it to start, and we'll just leave that. We'll go ahead and arm our emergency lights and close that. We'll come down, select our fuel pump switches right here. Just the wing tank fuel pumps. We're not going to have any fuel in the center tank at all. Go ahead and turn the position lights on because we are going to be firing up the APU, and we'll be pushing back from the gate here shortly. Once we've done that, we can go to the top of column 4, push in window heat, get those all taken care of, set our passenger signs to auto, and then we'll set our cabin altitude control to auto as well. Come to column 4, let's go ahead and turn our temperature knobs to the auto position for the air conditioning. Go ahead, turn our trim air and our recirc fans on. Set our packs to auto. Open that isolation valve, and well, the APU is already fired up, so we can do a couple things here. First, let's get our air conditioning going. We'll open up the APU bleed. Then we'll go ahead and connect our APU generator. So we'll click our APU generator switch in first, and then we'll disconnect our ground power. Alright, there we go. So let's see, you know, it's a good idea. I just do it anyway just because I don't like forgetting things. We can go ahead and press in our left and right engine bleeds. Not going to be a huge deal if we do that right now. So our overhead panel is basically taken care of for the moment. We can go ahead, our plane's loading. Let's see, how much fuel do we have to load? A little bit. We'll come down and start working on our FMC here. So to do that, we'll go ahead, click FMC. We have our ident page. You'll see we have our 757-300, Pratt & Whitney PW2000 engines. Our ARAC cycle 2004 is current. This is the current FlightFactor version of the plane, and here's some extra stuff. Go to our position initialization page, and here's where we want that GPS position. Drop that down into the scratch pad, set IRS position there, and then we can go to our route page. So now we just need to insert our airport identifier. So K, not SFO, K RNO will be going to SFO, K SFO. Put that in our destination. This is also if you had company routes put into your company route folder. You could select them here and then hit activate, but either way, hit activate and then execute. We could go right into our perf initialization, but first I like to have the route loaded. So let's go ahead, before we do that, we'll close the FMC for just a second. The plane's done loading, so we can do a couple things here that we can wait for while we're filling out the FMC. So we'll go to our plugins, we'll go to our Better Pushback plugin, we'll pre-plan our pushback here. It looks like I already must have had one pre-planned. We can just backspace and it'll get rid of that. And then to manipulate this, it's just your mouse wheel, and then left click to place, and then we can hit enter.
Ground to cockpit, plan acknowledged. Call me through the menu when you are ready.
Cool. Next thing we can do, we'll come down and get rid of our gate, ground services, so we don't need the GPU, the fuel truck, gate config, or chocks anymore. And then let's close that left forward door. And close the iPad then, and we'll go back to our FMC. And here's where we're going to be inputting our route. So we'll come back to our operational flight plan, and now we're going to be on page 2. Here we are, page 2, and you'll see routing right here. So here's our route. We're going to be departing Reno via runway 34 left, the P-Vine 3 SID, the Kurds transition, and we're not going to have any waypoints in between our SID and our star coming into San Francisco, so you'll see it just goes direct from Kurds to Orca there. If you were to have waypoints in there, I will show you in a minute how to input those, but we're not going to have any on this flight. So how do we start this then? We'll go to our departure arrival page on our FMC. We will select runway 34 left, and basically you just want to go as this reads, fill it in that way, think of it that way. P-Vine 3, Kurds transition. We can hit execute. Then we need to go back to our index page here. San Francisco arrivals. Here's where it's slightly different. We select our star before we select our star entrance waypoint, so to speak. We are going to use the RISD 1 arrival, RISD 1, the Orca transition, and the ILS 28 right approach. There are several transitions on the ILS approach. Archie is the farthest out and would be the most in line with our route, so we'll go ahead and select Archie, and then we'll hit execute. Then we need to clean up our legs page here a little bit. You'll see we have a box here with nothing in it. We don't want that. Yep, so it's in between Kurds and Orca. And now would be a good time to demonstrate this extra waypoint thing. So we can actually go to our route page and hit next page. And you'll see here we have our SID Kurds, and then Kurds right there. If we were to put in another waypoint, say, I don't know, we were going to be traveling for a certain period of time on a Victor Airway or something, or your average jetways, they're going to have identifiers like Quebec 51 or something like that, you know. So you'd put Q51 and you'd put it in this side where it says direct. It would fill in Q51 and these boxes would still be available, so then you'd put that waypoint after Q51 into these boxes. If you're going direct from waypoint to waypoint, you can come to this page and fill them in still, but you just have to fill in the waypoint identifier and drop it here. It'll just autofill direct. We're not going to be doing that. Like I said, it's just going direct from Kurds to Orca for us today, so we don't even need to mess with this page. We'll just go back to legs. We'll drop Orca into our scratch pad, and then we will drop it onto these boxes here. We can then hit execute, and let's check the rest here. RISD, aha. So we have a vectors followed by a route discontinuity. So to get rid of that, we'll drop Archie into our scratch pad and cover up the vectors this time. And then we'll hit execute. And now you'll see we have one nice clean route all the way through, no discontinuities or anything like that. Now we can go to our perf page, and here's where page 1 of our OFP is going to come in handy. We'll go ahead and right about there is where we need to be. So some of this stuff is going to autofill. We just have to click next to it. You'll see there, reserves. Now here we are. We're going to want, we have, let's see, according to our OFP here. It looks like we have 2,000 pounds of reserve and 2,007 pounds. We'll just put 2. I'm going to leave it at that. Cruise altitude is going to be flight level 330. And we're going to be using a cost index of 55 for this flight. Now we can go to our takeoff page. Standard flaps for departure is going to be 5. We can check out our CG. We'll need to adjust our trim here. And we can get some reference speeds on our steam gauge here, our airspeed gauge here, and as well as our speed tapes. So to do that, we'll just select on and click next to all 3 of those. That's it for the FMC. We can close that. We can get rid of our flight plan. All we have to do, guys, is push back from the gate and taxi on out of here. So we'll go ahead and start our pushback, and I'll see you guys in a couple of minutes.
Ground to cockpit. Tow is driving up. Okay, all doors and hatches are closed. Ready to connect. Tow connected and bypass pin inserted. Release parking brake.
Alright, our tug has been connected, and we're ready to push back. A couple things we want to do here, just that I noticed. We'll go ahead and make sure we have map selected for our nav display. And we're also going to need this display right here. It's going to have our N2 rotation. We're going to need that, as well as some oil temps and pressures that we want to check as our engines are turning on. We will come to our overhead panel, and like I said, our engine bleeds are open, but we need our packs to be off. We need that pressure from the APU to be enough to spin the turbine up to where we can dump fuel in and sustain that compression that the engine is going to be going through. So let's go ahead, we'll release the parking brake and begin our pushback here.
Starting pushback, and you may start engines.
Okay, let's come to our overhead panel here, and we want our engine start selector to be on either our 1 or 2 system, and then we need to make sure turn our bleeds off. You hear the air conditioning shut off, but our needle comes up a little bit here. We'll select engine 1, we'll turn the selector to the ground position, GND. The engine will begin to spool up, as we can see here. We need to watch this. As soon as we get to about 20% N2, we'll introduce fuel. There we are. Our EGT comes up, spikes, and then it should settle back down. There we go, there's the drop. We'll go back to our overhead. And as you can see, it's gone back to auto. Let's fire up the second one now. Same, basically it's the rinse repeat, basically. Turn that to ground. We'll monitor our instruments here. 13. Alright, there's 20. Introduce the fuel. EGT comes up. And settles back down. There we go.
Operation complete. Set parking brake.
Go ahead, set our parking brake, and let's go to our overhead panel.
Disconnecting tow. Stand by.
Our engines are fired up. Let's go ahead. We can set our packs back to auto now. And we don't have to worry about this. This will go away in just a second, as well as our hydraulics and such. Yep, there we go. That click is our engine generator kicking in. Now we can also, let's see, what else can we do here? We can get rid of our APU bleed. We'll keep the isolation open. We can get rid of our APU generator. We can turn our APU off. We'll let that cool down. Let's go ahead and disconnect. And it is getting a bit dark, so let's go ahead and turn some panel lights on here. Turn our MCP lights and our glare shield as well here. There we go. We just have to wait for him to disconnect, and we'll be good to get out of here.
Nose
Something else?
disconnected and bypass pin has been removed. Hand signal on the right. We'll see you next time and have a safe flight.
Alright, here we go. We need to adjust our trim. This is probably the last thing we need to do. Go ahead, go to our, remember our takeoff reference page here, and we had the CG and this trim setting. We want to set this to 4, so either you have a keyboard command for this or I have it set to buttons on my joystick. I just wait till we get right about there, and we're good to go. And that's that. Of course, now we'd want to check our weather. Looks like the altimeter currently is 299.4, so we'll set that. And we are all set to go. We can go ahead, turn our red strobes on since our engines are running. We aren't going to need our white strobes yet as we're not taking off. We can throw our logo light on now though, and all we need to do is throw the nose gear light on and we're ready to taxi, guys.
That's it for part 1. In part 2, we will be covering taxi, takeoff, climb out, and cruise. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to be kept up to date on any future videos, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon. Thanks for watching.